My name is Harold Schapelhouman. I'm the Fire Chief with the Menlo Park Fire Protection District. The Fire Protection District is located in the San Francisco Bay Area. We cover about 33 square miles. We have 7 stations and over 100 employees. Special districts cover more than one jurisdiction, so we have the town of Atherton, the city of East Palo Alto, the city of Menlo Park, and portions of unincorporated San Mateo County. We run about 8,000, just over 8,000 calls per year, and we're the host for one of the national urban search and rescue teams. There are 8 of those teams in California and 28 of the teams in total across the United States. I've actually been working with Dan since probably the early 1990s, and I've been with the fire district for 34 years. Dan Pomeroy was a guy that was brought to my attention that he had developed a core drill, and then I followed up with him on that, and when we met, we saw an immediate application that we could use that drill because of its portability for rescue operations. So we've used them, obviously we use them for training, but we've primarily used them when we're coring slabs. We did that at the Oklahoma City bombing. So if you have what's called widowmakers hanging off of buildings, or you need to penetrate concrete collapsed structures, if they're pancaked or whatever the configuration is, you can drill holes through there, you can put a camera through, you can drop a light stick through there and see what's down below. In the future, I'm sure robotics will be small enough to drop in there. There's a lot of different things that you can do with that coring drill because it's so portable and it's very usable. That's one of the things that we liked about it. Probably the most dramatic thing that we ever did with that core drill was we rescued a child in a bank vault, and the child was behind an 18-inch concrete wall, actually 18.5 inches. And we were able to penetrate the wall first with the Pomeroy core drill, and then secondly with a commercial drum drill, which was a 12-inch bit. But using the Pomeroy drill, we got our camera in there, could actually visualize where the child was and understand what we were dealing with inside the vault, which included non-secured security box lockers. So we didn't want to knock those over on the child that was in there. The child had been accidentally locked in there when they were going to do a move of the bank, and one of the employees brought her child in while they were doing the packing, and when she went in there, nobody noticed her in there, and they closed the vault door, and the vault was on a 12-hour timer with a foot release from the inside. But obviously a 2-year-old can't open up a bank vault. 9/11 was a little bit different game because it was a steel structure. Even though it was concrete, a lot of it was pulverized, so there wasn't really a necessity to use it during 9/11. I think there may have been 1 or 2 instances where we pulled it out, but really Oklahoma City, because of the type of concrete structure, heavy concrete that it was, where we actually used it most of all, and used it in a dramatic way. It wasn't just for looking through and under concrete. It was actually, again, taking the widowmakers. We didn't have a big enough bit back then. We didn't know what we were going to use it for, but we were able to get out on the slabs hanging off the building, core through with a smaller bit, make 3 holes on a 2-inch bit, and then drop a shackle through the slab, secure it using cabling and a crane, lift the slabs up, and then cut the rebar that attached it to the building, removing, again, what's called the widowmakers, or sections of collapsed flooring and roofing from that structure safely. So for the majority of the holes that we're probably dealing with about 4 to 6 inches, which is very easy with the bits that we use. So if we're using a 2-inch, which is pretty usual for a camera look, if we'll stick a camera through. And then if we're using it to start out a breaching hole, maybe a triangular cut where we're going to drill all 3 corners on a triangle, we can do something a little bit bigger, like a 4-inch. But all that takes time, so you have to balance how big the bit is versus what you want to use it for and how much time it's going to take. Drilling a 2-inch hole is very fast. The bigger you go, a 4-inch, even larger, is going to take more time. So, you know, ideally you don't go too much over a 5 or 6-inch bit. It's doable, but I wouldn't recommend it just because of the amount of time and the binding that it has. One of the nice things about the Pomeroy drill is that it had a portable water source. So you had a water container, and you could pump that water container and have pressurized water. You got to have the ability, you need the ability to keep that hole wet as you're drilling with the Pomeroy drill. I mean, more water is actually better because it flushes the debris out of the hole and it allows the bit to perform better than it would if it was a dry drill. You can do it with no water, but it's more difficult. Yeah, so the pathway, what we would do is you could use a rotor hammer if you wanted to do that in a series of, introduce a series of fractures. But typically what we'll do is we'll drill one hole, put the camera in, identify that we need to get in that area because it's a good area. It's not on top of another slab. As we put the camera through, we can see a passageway. So that's our first step. Then we'll take and make a triangle, box it out, and we'll drill 2 more holes with the Pomeroy on both of the other corners of the triangle. And then we can either connect that with a saw and go from point to point to point, or we can drill a series of holes with a smaller drill, or even use the core drill as well to do the same thing. Then we'll hit it with a sledgehammer and pulverize it, knocking the pieces out, or a jackhammer, whichever works best because of the size or thickness of the concrete. So again, you're not missing a step. If you start with the Pomeroy drill, use it with a camera, you're going to see what's below there and not waste your time, creating a hole that doesn't need to be there because it doesn't go anywhere. Well, with rebar is pretty much supportive, steel and concrete is not unusual. So, again, it's a matter of keeping that hole wet, taking the time. You could relocate if it's too difficult, but, it's all about the quality of the drill bit too. So, while Pomeroy doesn't make those bits, we use a company down in Santa Clara here that's called Easy Cut. Not really the drill. In fact, the Pomeroy drill using the still motor is a great combination because what Dan Pomeroy did was he sized it so that the saw itself, the power in the saw doesn't overwhelm you when it gets bound up. What you don't want is such a big motor that when you get stuck, it throws the operator around. Doesn't mean there's not a technique to using that drill based upon how you have to hold it, how you have to use it, how you have to keep it as straight and level as you can. And again, you need to use water if you have it. But for the most part, it won't throw you around if you use the right motor with the right bit. And again, smaller bits are not going to get stuck as easily as a larger bit. That's a bigger problem with a larger bit. Now, the only improvement that I've seen is the saw itself, or excuse me, the drill itself, the motor housing, there's really no need for improvement. Still is a very good piece of equipment. We've had great success with it. Again, I think the bits, that depends on what it is you're going to go through and how long. On the bank vault that we had an 18-inch bit, but the bank vault wall thickness was 18.5 inches. So, having some really unique kind of longer bits, smaller bits and so forth where you can get through something very quickly. It's more really about what your accessories are going to be with that tool and having enough in case you do get something stuck that you can move on to some of the location and abandon a bit if you needed to. And also, your portable water supply containers are going to be really important to be able to move those around. You don't want them to be so big you can't get them from where, one place to another. But I can tell you, operating off the 9th floor of the Murrah building when we used that saw or that drill, it was unique because we were hanging people off the side of the building with ropes on cantilever concrete. So, hanging the water source with a long enough cord to go to the supply was another thing that we really hadn't thought about before. So having a long enough hose that goes from the supply to the container is going to be critical as well. So again, accessorization is going to be really important for that device. Yeah, recoil, especially when you're hanging off of a building on a piece of concrete. And again, if it's not so much the recoil as it is the twisting of the tool, but again, the motor's pretty well sized to the drilling capability, so it's not going to throw the operator around. But it's nice to drill on something flat. It's a lot more difficult to drill on it when it's at an angle. So keeping the tool, in one spot is going to be important. One of the things that we did was we would take a piece of wood and ram set it into the concrete, and then use that almost as a little shelf or pedestal to keep the bit from moving around. You can make a V that does that as well, and so it doesn't allow it to twist, and that keeps you intact and not moving around on slanted concrete. That's just a little trick that we picked up in those types of situations. What are my final thoughts? I would definitely, look at it as an option. It certainly has proven to be very successful for us working on the disasters that we've had where it was applicable. Again, when you got concrete structures that you need to get through, this is a great tool, and its mobility, its portability is really the key that we enjoyed to have it. Again, for making a series of holes on a slab or on a collapse where you need to go stick a camera head in, this is the greatest tool. We actually combine this tool with our search teams. They use this tool with a 2-inch bit, and that one person can be drilling a series of holes in an area so you can look around and penetrate the concrete and see what's underneath it. That's a huge advantage. Again, a lot of those holes may be a place you aren't able to go because you can't do anything. You might find one where you find a huge alleyway or an area where you can actually get inside that structure and crawl around and look further. So, and find pockets of people that may be trapped in there. So this, again, combined with a search camera that we use, this is a great mobile system that's worked very well for us.